Praising the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending salutations on our beloved Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I begin as always by first thanking you, my host, for giving me this opportunity to convey the message of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I pray to the Almighty Allah that Allah accept these efforts of yours in listening to this message, as I pray to the Almighty Allah that Allah accepts these efforts of mine in trying to deliver the message of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as it was revealed on our beloved Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in its true and pure form over 1400 years ago. My young friends, the title has been advertised this evening is the importance of ilm deen, religious knowledge. How important is it for people like yourself and myself that profess, that declare La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, that there is no God worthy of worship but Allah, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam truly is the messenger of Allah? People like yourself and myself that claim that we love Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam more than the entire dunya and everything within it. How important is it for people like yourself and myself to acquire the knowledge of the deen, knowledge of the Quran, knowledge of the Sunnah? Familiarize ourselves with the teachings of Islam. Why should I waste my time learning the Quran, learning the Hadith of Rasulullah, learning the deen of Allah? What will it get me? How will it benefit me in the dunya, and how will it benefit me in the akhirah? My young friends, once upon a time, such was the love for Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and such was the level of iman, such was the commitment and dedication, such was the zeal, that every single one from amongst the believers, our forefathers, the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, every single one of them sacrificed whatever they possessed for Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They sacrificed their health to their wealth. They sacrificed their properties. They sacrificed their time. They sacrificed their children. They sacrificed their parents. They sacrificed their wives. My young friends, they even sacrificed their lives. When it came to Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when it came to the deen of Allah, when it came to Islam, they did not hesitate, not even for a second, to lay down their life for Allah and His Rasul. They lived by the kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and they died by the kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Whenever the call was made by Allah and His Rasul, the words will flow from their lips. Labbaik wa sa'daik wal khayru fi yadik. Ya Rasulullah, my wealth is at your disposal. Ya Rasulullah, my children, my wife, my property is at your disposal. Ya Rasulullah, my life is at your disposal. Tell me and I will do whatever you ask. Every single one of them. There was a fire burning inside their hearts. And this fire burning inside their hearts will not let them rest. Will not let them wine and dine on a Saturday evening. Wouldn't let them socialize. My young friends, this fire burning inside their hearts did not let them sleep till they did not elevate the kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah to every corner of the globe. This fire burning inside their hearts did not let them rest till they did not give everything that they possibly could give to Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How many a time you will have heard the story of Bilal? They would persecute him by day and they would persecute him by night. They would whip him by day and they would whip him by night. And when blood would gush from the blessed body of Bilal, to add salt to the wounds, the kuffar would drag Sayyidina Bilal Habshi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu in the scorching heat of Arabia and force him to lie on the burning sun in a land where temperatures exceed 45 degrees centigrade in the summer months. A land, my young friends, that even the mountains of Makkah cannot tolerate the heat of Makkah. And this is why you will find when you go to the sacred land that these mountains are black because they can't tolerate the heat. And they would force Bilal to lie on the burning sun. And then they would take a large stone and place it on his chest. And then they would torment further and say, "Oh Bilal, لا تزال هكذا حتى تموت أو تكفر بمحمد وتعبد اللات والعزى." Oh Bilal, you will remain like this. We will punish you day in, day out, night in, night out, till you do not leave the deen of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, until you do not return to the worship of the idols Lat and Uzza. They would persecute him by day, they would persecute him by night, and they would taunt him in this manner, لا تزال هكذا لا تزال هكذا. And Sayyidina Bilal Habshi radiallahu ta'ala anhu would take on his chest whatever they threw at him, and he would say, "O kafiru, ahad, ahad, you can do what you like. You can strip the flesh from Bilal's bones." Bilal declares the kalima la ilaha illallah, and he will die on the kalima la ilaha illallah. There is only one God worthy of worship, and that God is Allah, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger of Allah. A fire was burning inside his heart. He could lay down his life within an instant, without thinking, without hesitation, not once for Allah and His Rasul. My young friends, Bilal Habshi radiallahu ta'ala anhu, such was the level of Iman, such was the passion, such was the zeal, such was the love for Allah and His Rasul. If Allah gave him life 1,000,000 times, Bilal would not hesitate to lay down his life 1,000,000 times for Allah and His Rasul. Who can forget the likes of Khabbab, the same companion of Rasulullah? They would brand his head with hot iron rods. This is the same Khabbab. Just as you are gathered inside this masjid and you're listening to the reminder, the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala majma'een on one occasion are gathered around the great Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the Amir al-Mu'mineen, the commander of the faithful. And Sayyidina Khabbab enters the gathering. And as soon as the Amir al-Mu'mineen, Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, notices Khabbab, realizing the value of Khabbab, realizing the sacrifices Khabbab made for Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, appreciating Khabbab, his maqam, his status, the Amir al-Mu'mineen invites Sayyidina Khabbab right to the front of the gathering. And he makes him sit next to him. And then he addresses the gathering. He says, "Ma ala al-ardi ahadun ahaqqu bihadha al-majlis min hadha illa rajul wahid." I swear by Allah on the face of this earth, there is no one that is more worthy of this seat, of this majlis in which I have asked Khabbab to sit, more than Khabbab, except for one individual. No one on the face of this earth more worthy of this honor which I bestowed upon Khabbab, more than Khabbab, except for one individual. Only one individual was more worthy of this seat than Khabbab. So Sayyidina Khabbab radiallahu ta'ala asked, "Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, who is this individual that's more worthy of this honor, of this seat in which you've asked me to sit, more than myself?" And Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala said, "O Khabbab, only and only Bilal Habshi radiallahu ta'ala anhu is more worthy than you of sitting in this seat of this majlis." Sayyidina Khabbab radiallahu ta'ala said, "Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, in my opinion, Bilal is not more worthy of this honor than myself." And then he explained to the Amir al-Mu'mineen and the believers. He said to the Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, "O Amir al-Mu'mineen, there were times when the kuffar would persecute Bilal so much that other kuffar watching him being persecuted, their hearts would melt and they would pity him. They would pity Bilal. And they would come to the other kuffar and stop them from persecuting Bilal Habshi radiallahu ta'ala. But he said, "O Amir al-Mu'mineen, nobody would ever pity me when they persecuted me. Nobody's heart would melt when they persecuted and tormented and branded hot iron rods on the head of Khabbab. Nobody's heart would ever melt. Nobody would come to my rescue. Nobody would come and save me from their torment and their torture." And then he says to the Amir al-Mu'mineen, لَقَدْ رَأَيْتُنِي يَوْمًا أَخَذُونِي فَأَوْكَدُوا لِي نَارًا ثُمَّ سَلَقُونِي فِيهَا ثُمَّ وَدَأَ رَجُلٌ رِجْلُ عَلَى صَدْرِي فَمَا اتَّقَيْتُ الْأَرْضَ إِلَّا بِظَهْرِي. O Amir al-Mu'mineen, I witnessed the day in which they caught hold of me. The kuffar caught hold of me. They started a fire. When the fire became hot, they took off my clothes and then they dragged my body over heaps of smoldering charcoal. And then one of them, he stood on my chest, so I'm able to get up and run away from the fire. He asked, "O mu'mino, what do you think put out the fire that day?" It was none other than the blood and pus that came out from the back of Khabbab that put out the fire that day. O Amir al-Mu'mineen, Bilal is not more worthy than myself of this honor. I ask you, my young friends, who can forget the likes of Ammar ibn Yasir? The entire family. Ammar, Yasir, Sumayya, the first Shaheeda in Islam, the first woman to give her life for Allah and His Rasul. They would persecute them so much, this entire family, that when the Nabi of Allah would see them in the desert of Makkah being persecuted, tears would flow from the eyes of Rasulullah, dampening his blessed body, blessed beard. Tears would flow from his eyes, dampening his blessed beard. And Prophet ﷺ would console Ammar, Sumayya, Yasir, Isbiru ala Yasir, Isbiru ala Yasir, fa inna mu'idakum al-jannah. Hang on there, O family of Yasir. Be patient, stay strong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you so much that He's raised your ranks in paradise. Every single one of them, there was a fire burning inside his heart. And this fire did not allow him to rest till he did not elevate the kalima la ilaha illallah. And to elevate this kalima la ilaha illallah, every single one of them, my young friends, they would not hesitate to lay down their life for Allah and His Rasul. Not one time. If Allah gave them life 1,000,000 times, every single one of the companions of Rasulullah, this was the level of Iman, this was the love, this was the dedication, this was the commitment that they were prepared to give whatever they possessed for Allah and His Rasul. Look at when it came to familiarizing themselves with the teachings of Allah and His Rasul, familiarizing themselves with their Creator and their Mahbub Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala. Who was Abdullah bin Abbas? Abdullah bin Abbas was the son of Sayyidina Abbas. And who was Sayyidina Abbas? The chacha, the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My young friends, I ask you, how old do you think Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas was when our beloved Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam left this world? How old do you think he was? A mere 10 years of age. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left this world, Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was a mere 10 years of age. Now look at his passion and look at his love for Allah and His Rasul. My young friend, you were also once upon a time 10 years of age. There are many youngsters here today that are 10 years of age or nearabouts. What is the passion of our youth today? Our 10-year-olds. My young friends, their passion are their PlayStations. Their passions are the YouTube videos. Their passion is the internet. This is how they spend their day and night. And here, my young friends, look at the cousin of Rasulullah, 10 years of age. How aql-mand, is a person at the age of 10. This is tender age, young age. It's an age of play where you enjoy the dunya. Look at what gave Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas the buzz. As Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam leaves this world, he's no ordinary individual. He's the cousin of Rasulullah. He's been around the Nabi of Allah. He's been around the blessed house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam leaves this world and he comes to his Ansari friend and says, "Halumma falnasal ashab Rasulillah fa innama al-yawm al-kathir." Oh my Ansari friend, let us go to the great companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let us go to the likes of Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman and Ali and Talha, Zubair and Sa'ad and Sa'id. Let us go learn the deen of Allah from them. Let us go learn the Quran from them. Let us go learn the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let us learn from them what we couldn't learn from Rasulullah because of our young and tender age. The Sahaba are alive and well and in great numbers. My young friends, his Ansari friend responds, وَعَجْمًا لَكَ يَا ابْنَ عَبَّاسِ وَعَجْبًا لَكَ يَا ابْنَ عَبَّاسِ أَتَرَى النَّاسِ يَفْتَقِرُونَ إِلَيْكَ وَفِي النَّاسِ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ فِيهِمْ. What dream do you dream? Peer pressure. What dream do you dream, O Ibn Abbas? Do you think by learning the deen of Allah, by familiarizing yourselves with the teachings of Allah and His Rasul, you're going to become some great sheikh, you're going to become some alim, some mufti, some sheikh al-hadith, and people will travel far and wide and sit in your circles and benefit from you? Is this the dream that you're dreaming? When the companions of Rasulullah are in great number, alive and well. Abu Bakr is alive and well. Umar is alive and well. Ali is alive and well. They possess more knowledge than you will ever possess, and you still dream this dream? Peer pressure. But look at the aql and the intellect of this 10-year-old. He knew what will benefit him in terms of the akhirah. My young friends, this 10-year-old didn't allow this peer pressure to have an impact on him. He ignores what his Ansari friend says. And this 10-year-old Abdullah ibn Abbas, the cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whenever he was informed that somebody is narrating a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this 10-year-old child would humble himself and he would present himself to that companion of Rasulullah that was narrating the hadith of Rasulullah. Whenever he was informed that so-and-so is narrating the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abdullah bin Abbas, this 10-year-old child would present himself to him. And many a time he would find that this person to whom he's presented himself is sleeping at this moment in time. It's midday. He's taking his qaylula, he's taking his siesta, his afternoon nap. My young friends, the cousin of Rasulullah wouldn't use his maqam to disturb this individual or take advantage of his high status and knock on the door of this individual. No, my young friends, this 10-year-old child, Allah blessed him with such intellect that he would humble himself. He wouldn't knock on the door. He would wait outside this individual's house. He would take off his outer garment and he would lay down on the floor, and the wind would blow in the scorching heat of Arabia and cover his blessed body with dust and dirt. And he would remain there lying on the floor, my young friends. And he would wait till this individual would actually wake up from his sleep and open his door. And when this individual actually would wake up from his sleep and open his door, he would be shocked to see the cousin of Rasulullah sleeping on the ground covered in dust and dirt. He would be shocked to see that the cousin of Rasulullah is at his door. He's sleeping on the ground covered with dust and dirt. And this individual would address him. He would address him, Ya ibn Amma Rasulillah, or the cousin of Rasulullah, Ma ja'a bik? What brings you to my house? Halla arsalta ilayya fa'atiyak? Why didn't you tell me? I would have come to your house. I would have brought the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to you. And again this child would humble himself further and he would say to this individual, no, bhai, I'm the one that was in the need. You are the source of knowledge. You are the well. The thirsty should come to the well. This is the adab of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, my young friends. And he would take the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from him. Indeed, this Ansari lived to see the day when Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu had become greater than a king. Wherever you would see Abdullah bin Abbas, you would see hundreds and thousands of people around him. Some are questioning this young individual with regards to the verses of the Quran. Some are asking him questions with regards to the hadith of Rasulullah. Some are asking him questions with regards to lugha. My young friends, and the Ansari said, indeed this young individual was more clever than me. Who can forget the likes of Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu? My young friends, when did Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala declare the kalima la ilaha illallah? He wasn't from amongst the Sabiqeen al-Awwali. He wasn't like Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, Ali, that at the dawn of Islam, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam declared his prophethood, that he's the last chosen Nabi of Allah. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala wasn't from amongst those that declared the kalima at the dawn of Islam. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala, if you pick up the history books, my young friends, you will find that Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala declared the kalima la ilaha illallah 7th year of migration. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam spent 13 years in Makkah. Then he migrated to Madinatul Munawwara. 7th year of migration after Khaybar was conquered. This is when Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala declared the kalima la ilaha illallah. 20 years after the dawn of Islam. So he was not from amongst the Sabiqeen al-Awwaleen. But my young friends, look at the love for Allah and His Rasul. Look at the love to know who Allah is, to know who Rasulullah is, to familiarize himself with His blessed teachings. My young friend, he himself knew that he can never be like Abu Bakr and Umar. They declared the kalima, La ilaha illallah, the dawn of Islam. Abu Hurairah has lost 20 years from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whereas Abu Bakr and Umar have been able to benefit from Rasulullah 20 years more than Abu Hurairah. But my young friends, from the moment he declared the kalima La ilaha illallah, from the moment he declared the kalima La ilaha illallah, till Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not leave this world, wherever you found the Nabi of Allah with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you found the likes of Abu Hurairah. From that moment onwards, till he declared the kalima, till Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam's death, wherever you found the Nabi of Allah, with him you found Abu Hurairah. Whether Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was home or abroad, whether he was in Medina al-Munawwara or outside Medina al-Munawwara, whether the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in battle, wherever he was, whether it was day or night, wherever you found the Nabi of Allah, with him you found Sayyidina Abu Hurairah. Now that he's been guided by Allah, now that Allah has shown him the Sirati Mustaqim, my young friends, now he's realized the value of life. Now he does not want to waste one more second of his life, and he takes full advantage that wherever you found the Nabi of Allah, with him you will find Abu Hurairah. So much so, my young friends, that on one occasion our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Abu Hurairah, "Oh Abu Hurairah, why is it that you don't ask me for mali ghanimat? Booty, spoils of war. Your friends, the companions of Rasulullah, your friends, they're always asking me for mal. They're asking me for dollars and dimes. They're asking me for booty, spoils of war. But you never ask me for dunya. You never ask me for mali ghanimat. You never ask me for spoils of war. Why?" Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu's response, listen to it, my young friends. He said to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, "Ya Rasulullah, as'aluka an tu'allimani mimma 'allamaka Allah." Ya Rasulullah, this dunya doesn't interest me. Wal akhiratu khayrun wa abqa. This dunya doesn't interest me. Ya Rasulullah, the akhirah interests me. Ya Rasulullah, this dunya doesn't interest me. Mali ghanimat doesn't interest me. Dollars and dimes do not interest me. Ya Rasulullah, the only thing that interests Abu Hurairah is that you give him some of the nur that Allah has placed inside your heart. Ya Rasulullah, give me some of the light which Allah has placed inside your heart. Give me some of that knowledge which Allah has given to you. This is the only thing that interests Abu Hurairah. This is why, Ya Rasulullah, whether it's day or night, whether you're in Hazr or Safar, Abu Hurairah is with you to take some of that nur, some of that light. He says, Sayyidina Abu Hurairah says, okay, my friends from the Muhajirin and Ansar, some of them were occupied. Some were occupied with their businesses, just like you and I are occupied with our businesses. And that's become our priority in life. As if we're going to take these riches with us inside our graves and in the akhirah. And if this is what will benefit us in terms of our akhirah. Some of my companions, their businesses take up their time. And some of them, their orchards keep them busy. But me, he said, I was a poor man. I possess nothing. I did not eat leavened bread or wear robes of silk or have servants to serve me. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala says, I was so poor that I would take stones and I would tie these stones on my stomach to ease the pain of hunger. That's how poor I was. I would take stones, and to ease the pain of not having eaten for days, I would tie stones to ease the pain of hunger. And sometimes he says, إني لأخر فيما بين منبر الرسول وحجرة عائشة مغشيا عليه. He says sometimes days would go past in which I would not even eat a morsel, receive a morsel to eat. As a result of which, I would faint in the masjid of Rasulullah. So in Masjid Nabawi, I would faint. Between the mimbar of Rasulullah and Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha's room, my legs would not be able to carry me and I would faint. Passers by would pass by. And they would place their feet on the neck of Abu Hurairah inside the masjid of Rasulullah, thinking Abu Hurairah has become a madman. Abu Hurairah has become, majnoon, insane. He says, oh Muslimano, it was not that Abu Hurairah had become a madman. It's not that Abu Hurairah had become insane. I swear by Allah, days would go by in which I would not receive a morsel, and I would become so weak that my legs would not be able to carry my weight, and I would come crashing to the ground and faint in the masjid of Rasulullah, as a result of which people would think that I'm a madman and I've become insane. And he says, sometimes my condition was so bad that I would stop the senior companions, the likes of Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman and Ali, and I would pretend, and I would ask them with regards to a particular verse of the Quran, okay, tell me about this verse, tell me the meaning of this verse. He says, I swear by Allah, the reason I would stop them and I would ask them, not because Abu Hurairah did not know that verse of the Quran, not because he did not know the meaning of that verse. I would stop them and I would ask them, okay, maybe when they look at Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala an, they will be able to see the signs of hunger on his face, that Abu Hurairah hasn't eaten for days. And they will pity him, and then they will take him home, and they will feed him, and they will satisfy his hunger. He says, this is why I would stop them and I would question them. He says, in spite of this being my condition, that I was so poor, he says, I would still present myself in the gathering of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whereas they would be absent. And he says, I would remember what Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whereas they would forget. And then he says, on one occasion, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever takes off his garment and he spreads it till I finish this talk of mine, and then gathers his garment and places it on his chest, I swear by Allah, he will never forget what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has uttered, what Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said. I ask you, my young friends, when the Nabi of Allah uttered these blessed words, who in that gathering do you think was the first to take off his garment? None other than Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala. My young friends, Abu Hurairah could not afford to waste. Since Allah gave him hidayat and he entered the kalima la ilaha illallah, and he realized the value of life, and he realized the purpose of life, why Allah has placed him in this dunya, my young friends, he did not want to waste one more second of his life. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah took off his garment. He says, this was the only garment on my body, and I took it off and I spread it just like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and I waited for Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam to finish his speech. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam finished his speech, I took it and I placed it on my chest, just as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had mentioned. He says, when I put this garment on my chest, I swear by the one that sent Muhammad with haqq, with truth, I have never forgotten any word that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has ever uttered. 4 years, my young friends, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away in year 11. He embraced the kalima in year 7. My young friends, I ask you, how many hadiths do you think Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala narrated? Today, my young friends, the hadiths that we have, you will find are the companions of Rasulullah. The hadiths that have reached us, no companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrates more hadiths than Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala. We have received over 5,000 hadiths from Sayyidina Abu Hurairah. A fire burning inside their hearts, my young friends. They would not rest till they gave everything to Allah and His Rasul. He dedicated every second of his life from the moment he declared the kalima La ilaha illallah, my young friends, till his last breath, he dedicated to Islam. Such was a passion for the deen. My young friends, you and I can't make it to the local halaqah in the local masjid, which is within 100 meters. And here, you have Sayyidina Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiallahu ta'ala anhu traveling for the sake of one hadith. One hadith. He traveled all the way from Madinatul Munawwara to Egypt. You know, you and I can't comprehend these narrations and these stories. Why? Because we live in an era where travel is so easy. You know, you're sitting in this gathering here and now you can take out your Samsung or your iPhone and you can go onto what you call an EasyJet or Ryanair website here and now, and within a minute you can book your ticket and you can book your seat within a minute. Traveling is so easy. You can get to other part of the world within hours. In those days when they traveling was not an easy thing. In those days it would take months, years, and before they even left, they would make wasiyat. They would instruct their wives and their children and their parents, okay, if I die and I don't return, this is what I want you to do in my absence. This is how difficult it was to travel in those days. So you can just imagine Sayyidina Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu traveling from Medina to al-Munawwara all the way to Egypt in those days, which would take at least a month to get there. And he went just for the sake of one hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Make the comparison. There are people like you and me that declare that Allah and His Rasul, bas. There is no one beyond that. And then you have the likes of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The fortunate one. Why was he the fortunate one? Did he not receive the honor of entertaining our beloved Nabi Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when Rasulullah migrated from Makkah to Medina? In whose house did he reside? Sayyidina Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. So he was from the near and dear companions of Rasulullah. He benefited from Rasulullah. He would attend the gatherings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then I ask you, my young friends, somebody that saw Rasulullah from so close, that Rasulullah lived in his house, he was able to do khidmat of Rasulullah, he would attend the gatherings of Rasulullah, he heard many ahadith from Rasulullah, then why would somebody like him travel all the way from Medina to Egypt for the sake of one hadith? Why would he travel? You've heard hundreds. Why would you travel? He gets to Egypt and he meets a man called Uqba. Uqba, on seeing the great companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, asked, "Ma ja'a bika ya Aba Ayyub?" Oh Abu Ayyub, what brings you here to Egypt? And Sayyidina Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiyallahu ta'ala says, a hadith of Rasulullah. Out of all those that directly heard this hadith from the blessed tongue of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, only you and I remain alive. Listen very carefully to his words. Out of all those that heard the hadith from Rasulullah, only you and I remain alive. So it's not that he didn't know the hadith. He was in that gathering. Just like at this moment in time, you're in my gathering, you're listening to what I'm saying. He was in the gathering of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when Rasulullah uttered those blessed words. But still, my young friend, he's traveled all the way from Medina to Egypt for the sake of the same hadith. He said, only you and I remain alive. And he says to him, relate the hadith with regards to concealing the faults of a believer. Relate the hadith with regards to concealing the faults of a believer. Sayyidina Uqba narrates the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that our beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever conceals the faults of a believer in the dunya, Allah will conceal his faults in the akhirah. Sayyidina Abu Ayyub has heard this hadith. After hearing this hadith, he addresses Uqba. Sadaq, you've spoken the truth. You've spoken the truth. This is exactly how I recall the Prophet ﷺ said when we were in that gathering. So he knew the hadith. He's gone from Medina to Egypt just to see, does he recall the exact words? Years have passed. Rasulullah ﷺ has passed away. He's gone all the way to Egypt to see, does he still recall the exact words that our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam uttered? And when he heard exactly the same words, he said, Sadaq, you've spoken the truth. My young friends, this was his maqsad. This was his maqsad, this was his objective. Now he gets back onto his mount and he turns his mount and he heads back to Madinatul Munawwara. He did not even stop in Egypt for a bite to eat, for a cup of tea. He headed back to Madinatul Munawwara. And this example that I've given you, Sayyidina Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, it's not an isolated example. There's books written on this particular subject, Ar-Rihla fi Talib al-Hadith. A man comes all the way from Medina and he goes to Sham, the blessed land of Sham. May Allah help the people in Sham at this moment in time. Alleviate their sufferings and take care of them just as Allah took care of the Muslims in Badr. They are so much in need of people like yourself and myself in terms of their dua and financial help. May Allah give us the tawfiq to help our brothers. And may Allah give us the tawfiq that we never forget to mention our brothers. Come as come once a day in our prayer. Kama tadina tudan, as you do, you will be done. My young friends, by the grace of Allah, our halat are very good at this moment in time. But you know, تِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. Allah can turn the tables within a second. Nowadays, you know, revolutions used to take place. You had to plot and plan for revolutions once upon a time. And they would come after years. Nowadays, with your WhatsApps and your media and your Google and your internet, revolutions take place within hours. And you know, the dunya can change. And within a second, ضَاقَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْأَرْضُ بِمَا رَحُبَتْ. The earth, in spite of its vastness, can become tight upon you. So never forget Allah. Never forget your identity. Never forget the teachings of Allah and His Rasul. And never forget your Muslim brothers. الْمُؤْمِنُونَ كَرَجُلْ وَاحِدٍ إِنْ اشْتَكَى عَيْنُهُ اشْتَكَى كُلُّهُ. The Muslims are like one single body. If any one limb is in pain, the entire body should feel that pain till that limb is not cured. You should not be sleeping. You know, you should be restless and always agitated and always thinking about your brothers. May Allah give me the tawfiq to help. And may Allah give you the tawfiq to help. He went to the blessed land of Sham to meet the great Sayyidina Abu Darda. And he said to Sayyidina Abu Darda, "O Abu Darda, I swear by Allah, I've not come to Sham for business." You know, in those days they used to go Sham too for business. Allah talks about in the Quran, لِإِلَافِ قُرَيْشِ إِلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. The Quraysh themselves used to go to Sham to bring goods and to sell them in Makkah al-Mukarramah. So he says, I swear by Allah, I haven't come for business and I've not come to Sham because I'm in need. I've come to Sham for the sake of one hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's it. When he said this to Sayyidina Abu Darda, the great companion of Rasulullah, Sayyidina Abu Darda was so happy that he gave him glad tidings, good news, and he related the hadith of Rasulullah with regards to seeking knowledge. He narrated, مَا مِنْ عَبْدٍ يَخْرُجُ يَطْلُبُ عِلْمًا. Any servant of Allah leaves his house in search of knowledge. Allah honors him so much that the angels place their wings for him. And he's on a path to paradise. He dies whilst he's searching knowledge. He's going to paradise. And when the fadl al-alim al-abid, the superiority of an alim upon an abid is like the moon of the 14th night upon the stars. And Allah loves this individual so much that in the inhabitants of the heavens to the earth make dua for him. From the fish in the ocean to the birds in the sky to the ants in the anthole, make dua, oh Allah, forgive Abdullah, forgive Abdullah, forgive Abdullah. He related this hadith to him. They would give their entire life. You had a man called Baqi ibn Makhlad, you had a man called Ibn al-Qasim first. Ibn al-Qasim was the student of the great Imam Malik in Madinatul Munawwara. 17 years of his life he spent at the feet of Malik. You know, today, mashallah, you and I will go in the khidmat of Mr. Google and everyone's a qualified scholar. Everyone is a qualified scholar other than the scholar that is qualified. And everyone will have an opinion other than the scholar himself. इतना जुल्म है दीन के साथ, इतना जुल्म है दीन के साथ. Yet this will not happen in any other field. Let me ask you a question. Do you take the medicine book and you don't go to the doctor and you take your own medicine from that book? You'll never do that, because at the back of your mind you know if you've cocked up, boy, it might harm you big time. You just might be history. So even though you may possess knowledge, but you will not take that medication till you don't go to the doctor and get it prescribed. And that happens in every field. But you know what? The Quran is a walkover, and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a walkover. And this is why as an ummah we are lost. And our Salafus Salihin, they would spend 30, 40 years, and even then their bodies would shake when somebody asked them a question in case they're cocked up, because they know the difference is heaven and hell. You can't play with your deen. It's as simple as that. 17 years Ibn al-Qasim stayed at the feet of the great Imam Malik in Madinatul Munawwara. So much so that on one occasion, Hajis, a group of Hajis of Egypt came to visit the Rawza of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to say their salam and express their love to our beloved Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They entered the masjid. Imam Malik his dars would take place in the masjid of Rasulullah. Now with this group of Hajis from Egypt is a young individual, his face is covered. And he greets Imam Malik, Assalamu alayka ya Malik. And he asked Imam Malik, is there a man here called Ibn al-Qasim? Ibn al-Qasim was pointed out. Imam Malik said, this person there, that's Ibn al-Qasim. Now this young individual, his face is covered. He makes his way to Ibn al-Qasim and he begins to kiss the forehead of Ibn al-Qasim in that gathering. He begins to kiss the forehead of Ibn al-Qasim. Ibn al-Qasim's shocked. I don't know this guy from Adam and he's kissing my forehead. My young friends, Ibn al-Qasim did not know that this young individual kissing his forehead was none other than his own son, his own flesh and blood. How can you not know this is your own flesh and blood? How can you not know? My young friends, when he left home 17 years ago. You know, it wasn't like you've gone in the morning and come back in the evening. He left home 17 years ago in such a state that his wife was expecting. And he said to his wife, Pyari, I'm going to familiarize myself with my Allah and my Rasul. I want to know who my Allah and who my Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, and I want to live life to please my Allah and my Rasul. I'm going to learn the deen of Allah. When I will return, I don't know. If you want to stay as my wife and you can make sabr, then that's fine. But if you can't make sabr, because I don't know when I will return, and as a result you want to separate, you want to divorce, you want to move on, then I can accommodate this by giving you talaq. My young friends, wives were wives. She accommodated his wish and desire, and she chose to remain his wife while she was expecting. And she gave birth to their son in his absence. And this was the first time he was seeing his own flesh and blood after 17 years. And if you think, my young friends, giving 17 years for this deen is something, then my next question will be to you, what will you say about a scholar called Baqi ibn Makhlad al-Qurtubi from Cordova, Muslim Spain, the very land that Muslim ruled for hundreds and hundreds of years? Baqi ibn Makhlad al-Qurtubi was from Muslim Spain. He left home twice. The first time he left home, he remained absent for 14 years. The second time he left home, he remained absent for 20 years. If Ibn al-Qasim gave 17 years at the feet of Malik, then Baqi ibn Makhlad al-Qurtub gave 34 years. You know, you and I will compete in terms of the dunya. I've got one car, you have to have two. I have one house, you have to have two. I've got a particular pair of trainers, you've got to have a particular pair. I've got Samsung 4, you want to have Samsung 5. We compete in terms of the dunya because the dunya is our primary objective. We've forgotten why Allah's placed us in this dunya. These people, my young friends, they realize why Allah placed them in the dunya. Their objective was the akhirah. They would compete in terms of the akhirah. You and I struggle to give 1 hour for the Quran. We will talk like kings, yet we can't even read the basic Quran. We can't recite the Quran with tajweed. Even though learning the Quranic, the correct recitation is wajib upon the believers. And this will not be an excuse on the Day of Judgment. Here, Baqi ibn Makhlad al-Qurtubi has given 34 years to learn the deen of Allah. And you and I have become scholars overnight. Mr. Google. And we have opinions. And then we'll begin to debate the opinion. And we'll force others to accept our opinion. Because all of a sudden, mashallah, you are now authority in terms of the deen. 34 years, yet you've never studied from any scholar whatsoever. You are a self-proclaimed scholar. You've read Bukhari, you've read Muslim, and that's as far as it goes. And even then, you've read the translation, somebody else's translation. God knows whether it's correct or incorrect. 34 years. He walked from Muslim Spain on foot all the way to Makkah, Medina, Iraq. Thousands of miles he covered on foot. This is the same Baqi ibn Makhlad al-Qurtubi who would live on cabbage leaves. You know, cabbage leaves scraps which people throw on the ground. My young friends, he would pick them up, he would clean them, he would eat them, and that is what would sustain him. How many a time he sold his trousers. Trousers, my friends. Trousers he sold. And the money that he got, he would buy paper so he could write the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you think 34 years was a sacrifice, and believe me, you know, it's some sacrifice. Our little minds can't comprehend such dedication. What would you say to a man called Hafiz ibn Manda? Hafiz ibn Manda. Hafiz, you know, in this day and age, when we use the word Hafiz, it's to describe a person that's memorized the Quran. And by the grace of Allah, there's many. You know, in those days when they used the word Hafiz, in those days, more or less, everyone was a Hafiz. So, you know, being a Hafiz wasn't an achievement, even though it's a great achievement. In those days, they used to give the title Hafiz to that individual who had memorized 100,000 ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam off by heart, sanadan wa matanan. Sanad and matan, the chain of transmission and the text. Any person that had memorized 100,000 hadith in this manner, he was called a Hafiz. My friends, our little mind can't comprehend. You know, if you truly want to get a grasp of what I'm saying, you know, after this lecture finishes, see if you can learn 10, 20 hadiths of Bukhari like that. And then come and WhatsApp me or, you know, email me, tell me how long it took you to memorize 10, 20 hadiths with the sanad and matan. 100,000 hadiths. How old do you think he was when he left home? 20 years of age when he left home. 20 years of age. You know, in this day and age, if a child doesn't go to university, then this is the age that his parents will normally tell him, okay, son, you've done your studying, now get yourself a job. And you'll start beginning to start working. And when will you retire? Even though the government wants you to keep on working till you're dead, yeah, so they don't have to give you a pension, but in general it's 65. And that's life, more or less. There's not many people that surpass 65. But okay, mashallah, in this day and age, I should say mashallah, half of the guys are dropping dead just on the treadmill. Fit as fiddles, heart pops, kading, is history. So, not many past 65, and that's when you retire. How old do you think he was when he returned, when he left at the age of 20? 65 years of age when he returned home. And he left at the age of 20. This is what you call a believer. You know, it took him 45 years. He gave 45 years learning the deen of Allah. When you're learning the deen of Allah, what you're really doing? You're familiarizing yourself. What's the deen about? It's about Allah and His Rasul. So whatever you acquire, in a nutshell, you are actually familiarizing yourself with your Allah, your Khaliq. You're getting to know your Khaliq, every single bit of Him. You're getting to know your Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, your Mahbub, your beloved. You're getting to know every single bit about Him. That's what you're doing when you're learning the deen of Allah. 45 years of life. My young friends, who hasn't heard the name of Imam Shafi'i? There will be many believers in this day and age that haven't heard the name of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, Imam Malik and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah. Allah gave acceptance to these four individuals. There were many schools of thought in the early days, but there was not many people that followed them schools, and over time came to an end. But Allah gave acceptance to these four so much that the whole world more or less follows. Greater number follows the Hanafi school of thought, then you have the Shafi'i school of thought, and then you have the Maliki school of thought, and you have the Hanbali school of thought. This is the exception that Allah gave these. Do you think Imam Shafi'i became Shafi'i overnight? 16 years Imam Shafi'i sustained himself on dates. 16 years of his life he sustained himself on dates, and he would only eat as much as he needed to survive. 16 years of life. He was so poor, Imam Shafi'i, that he could not afford to buy paper and ink. He would write on stones. He would write on leather. He would write on bones. Imam Shafi'i. 7 years of age, my young friend. And Imam Shafi'i is in the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sitting in the gathering of the great Imam Malik, the Imam of Madinatul Munawwara. 7 years of age. My young friend, what is 7 years of age? Were you not once upon a time 7 years old? Was I not once upon a time 7 years of age? Yeah. You know, at that tender age, children don't know their right from their left in terms of their deen. They're still on basics, qaida, alif, ba, ta, tha, at the 7 years of age. The only thing that interests a child at the age of 7 is what? Play. But you know, in this day and age, that's the only interest even our 40-year-olds. Sitting down with their PlayStations, beards down here, yeah? And he's fighting with his son, because you've been playing with it all day, it's my turn. And he's playing with his friend. You're laughing, but that is a sad reality. It's a funny world. And there's some funny people living in this funny world. And you know, if Allah doesn't guide, you cannot be guided. If Allah doesn't open the heart and mind and doesn't allow you to see sense, my young friends, even at 85, you cannot see sense. So a 7-year-old, the only thing that interests him, what? Play. He plays by day, he plays by night, he has no fikr of the dunya. And here you have a 7-year-old Shafi'i. He's in the masjid of Rasulullah, and he's sitting in the gathering of the great Imam Malik in Madinatul Munawwara. Now Imam Malik would relate the hadith of Rasulullah in his masjid. And the way he would relate the hadith of Rasulullah, this was his practice. He would relate the hadith of Rasulullah like this. He would say, An fulan, an sahibi hadha al-maqam. That so-and-so narrates the hadith, he narrates it from so-and-so, and this so-and-so narrates it, an sahibi hadha al-maqam, from the one inside the grave. And then he would point at the grave of Rasulullah when he would say these words. That he narrates it from the one inside this grave, because he used to give dars inside the masjid, and the grave's inside the masjid. And then he would relate the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now on one occasion when Imam Malik was relating the hadith of Rasulullah, an fulan, an sahibi hadha al-maqam, and he was actually pointing at the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he saw this young Shafi'i, 7 years of age, he's sitting there, and he's playing with something. He's got a straw inside his mouth, and he's adding his saliva to it. Now this sudden Imam Malik, itna be-adab, that this child has no respect. I'm narrating the hadith of Rasulullah and he's playing. You know, don't get me wrong guys, standards were different. In those days, high expectations, high standards. Not like you and me, you know, half of the time, what do you call it, you know, when there's a talk going on, one's in the east and one's in the west. And in Jummah, mashallah, you know, youngsters will walk in last 10 minutes, and even that's their time for their qaylula. They're yawning, they're sleeping, this is the time to take rest. That's the adab and ihtaram that we've got. And then we'll still profess that by Allah and His Rasul, bas, nobody beyond that. Their standards were so high, I don't know whether it was Imam Malik or Imam Bukhari, one of the two, that, you know, it was narrating the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and within the gathering is becoming pale. But he's still sitting there with adab and ihtaram and narrating the hadith of Rasulullah. And after the gathering, he asked one of the those attending the gathering to raise the garment, see if there's anything behind me. And a scorpion had stung him 16, 17 times in his back. Adab ihtaram for the hadith of Rasulullah, he wouldn't move. And he kept on narrating the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when you have such a standard, where are you going to tolerate even if it's a child? showing, well, you're assuming that, there's so much disrespect there. So he waited. On that day, Imam Malik narrated 40 hadith. He waited for the gathering to come to an end. And when the gathering came to an end, Imam Malik called the 7-year-old, Shafi'i. The 7-year-old came and sat in front of his ustad with adab and ihtaram. And Imam Malik said to him, "Bache, you have no respect. Itna bi adab that you, when I'm narrating the hadith of Rasulullah, you're playing with a straw." And the child said, and this is worth listening to, my young friends, never forget. The child said to Imam Malik, "Ya Sayyidi ma kuntu a'bath." I wasn't playing. Oh, my master, my beloved teacher, I wasn't playing. I swear by Allah, I was writing with my spit what you were saying so I don't forget. I wasn't playing. He was using the straw, adding spit to it and writing so he doesn't forget the hadith of Rasulullah which Imam Malik was narrating. He said, "Oh, my teacher, I'm so poor that I don't even have a dirham, I don't even have a pound to buy ink and paper, as a result of which I'm resorting to these methods." Imam Malik was shocked. So shocked that Imam Malik wanted to put him to the test and said, "TK bhai, if you're telling me the truth, then just relate one hadith out of the 40 that I narrated today. Just one." My young friends, the young Shafi'i sat just as his ustad Imam Malik would sit and relate the hadith of Rasulullah. And he began. Hadith number 1, an fulan, an sahibi hadha al-maqam. And just as Imam Malik would point to the grave of Rasulullah, the child pointed at the grave of Rasulullah and uttered his first hadith. He began with the second, an fulan, an sahibi hadha al-maqam. He began with the third, an fulan, an sahibi hadha al-maqam. The child narrated all 40 hadith which Imam Malik had narrated in that gathering on that day. Just as Imam Malik. And that's how he became Imam Shafi'i. You are the master of hadith, my young friends. I came with the intention of speaking for an hour, and I think it's more or less an hour. Another 5-10 minutes and I'll conclude. You are the master of hadith, Ibn al-Tahir. A time came when all he had left was 1 dirham, 1 pound. And he's now thinking, what should he spend this dirham on? He's in need of 3 things. Ink, paper, and bread to satisfy his hunger. 3 things. Ink, paper, bread. And he's actually thinking about what should he spend his last dirham on. That would never cross your mind. That would never cross my mind. We satisfy our hunger even when we're not hungry. Never mind when we're hungry. The question wouldn't even arise. But we're talking about a fire burning inside their heart, and this fire wouldn't let them give preference to anything other than Allah and His Rasul and the deen of Allah. He's actually sitting there and he's thinking, what should he spend his last penny in? His heart wouldn't allow him to give preference to his stomach over the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he did not spend an hour or 2, my young friends. He says, 3 days I spent just thinking on what I should spend this last pound on. Ink, paper, or bread to satisfy my hunger. 3 days. And now when he got to a stage where he was ma'zur, mustar, majboor, he said to himself, I'm now in such a position that even if I were to buy ink and paper, I don't have the strength to write the hadith of Rasulullah. And when he got into that position, he now took that 1 dirham, placed it in his mouth and left to buy some bread. And unfortunately, he says, I swallowed it by mistake. And I said, oh Allah, look what's happened for 3 days, and now that I've made intention to go buy some bread, you've taken the dirham from me. It was only when a friend of his realized the difficulty that he went through, did he actually take him home and feed him. Never mind giving the last dirham, you had a man called Yahya ibn Ma'in. He was a master of Jar and Ta'dil. It's a science in hadith. He inherited 1 million dirhams when his father passed away. If you and I were to inherit 1 million pound in this day and age, and mashallah, 1 million pound in this day and age is a large sum. What would you spend your 1 million pound? You start fulfilling your dreams. For some, a Bugatti Veyron. For some, a new bungalow. And for some, whatever tickles your fancy. Look at this believer. 1 million dirhams, he spent every single one acquiring the hadith of Rasulullah. That in his halat is written, it got to a stage where he had to sell his shoes because he had no money left, so that he could buy paper and write the hadith of Rasulullah. Imam Abu Yusuf, the student of Imam Hanifa, he did not attend the janazah of his own son. How can you not do that? Your son has died and you don't attend his own janazah. He made provisions, but he did not attend the janazah of his own son in case he missed the lecture of Abu Hanifa. Ishaq ibn Rahway married a woman, not because she bamboozled him. She was God's gift on earth, and he was stunned by her astounding beauty. He married her because she inherited the books of Imam Shafi'i. He wanted to benefit from these books, so he married her and brought her home as his wife. And as a result, they excelled. When you give everything to Allah, then Allah gives something in return. The same Yahya ibn Ma'in says, I wrote with my own hands 1 million hadiths. He gave 1 million dirham, Allah gave him 1 million hadiths. This same Ishaq ibn Rahway that married this woman for the sake of hadith, he says, whatever I would hear, I would memorize. And whatever I memorize, I never forgot. From the top of their heads, they would write books. Abu Bakr ibn al-Ambari, 30 books. Ibn Shaheen, 300. Suyuti, 500. The list continues. What to say of Ibn Hajar, Badruddin, Al-Aini, Nawawi, you name them one by one. Everyone was a master. I ask my young friends, where do you and I compare with our forefathers in terms of the deen? In terms of the dunya, we live on earth and we talk about planets which are millions of light years away in terms of our dunya. That's how far taraqi, how far we've got. We sit in the dunya and you've got people ringing us from the ISS, speaking to us, millions of miles away, speaking to us. We're sending spaceship to Mars in terms of our dunya. Look at this insan, look at where he's got in terms of his dunya. And in terms of his akhirah, my young friends, it's sad to say that many of us struggle to know how to even perform istinja. Masail with regards to istinja, basic masail. How many times do you relieve yourself a day? 3 times, 4 times, 5 times? Basic masail with regards to purity, impurity, masail with regards to istinja, masail with regards to istibra. Majority of you will not even heard the word istibra. In terms of our deen, my young friends, this is how ignorant we are. In terms of our deen, masail with regards to istinja, there are what's the biggest obligation in Islam after Iman? Biggest obligation in Islam after Iman is Salah. Open the book of Allah. Every 5th, 6th page, Allah talks about Salah. Aqimis Salah. Inna salata kanat al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta. Hafidhu ala salah. حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون كان يأمر أهله بالصلاة والزكاة. Verse after verse talks about salah. My young friends, there are not thousands, there are millions out there that don't know how to perform salah. They walk in twice a year, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, and they look at those in front of them how to offer their salah. Don't be deceived by the handful that come and read here. Those that are actually practicing are probably 1 or 2% out of the Muslims that we have. 98% in this country don't even practice their deen. So where are they going to know their salah? Never mind salah, the Tablighi Jamaat will tell you that travel far and wide. There are people out there that struggle to read Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. They can't even pronounce that. The problem is not the ignorance. That's not the problem. Why? Because we're all ignorant. Yeah? I'm ignorant. If you compare me to someone else, I'm ignorant. If you compare yourself to someone else, you're ignorant. Allah says, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي إِلْمٍ أَلِيمٍ. Above every knowledgeable person, there is a person more knowledgeable. So we're all ignorant. Ignorance is not the problem. You know what the problem is? It's the carefree attitude when it comes to the deen of Allah. No care. As if, we're guaranteed paradise awaits us. Allah loves us so much that He's going to give us paradise. It's a carefree attitude when it comes to the deen of Allah. Carefree attitude. We've got time to socialize. We've got time to wine and dine. We'll sit hours on end to watch a game of footy. But we can't sit down for an hour when it comes to the deen of Allah. 1 hour, and I'm not asking you to become scholars. You know, that's too much. I'm not asking you to give 17 years of life. I'm not asking you to give 34 like Baqi ibn Makhlad al-Qurtubi or 45 like Hafiz ibn Manda. All I'm asking is 1 hour a week. 1 hour a week. So it helps us fulfill our obligation towards our Creator and fulfill our purpose in life. The problem is the carefree attitude. Look at the resources that we have. By the grace of Allah, we have hundreds of scholars at our disposal. You know, once upon a time, people say, "Oh, ulama ko English nahi aati, baat nahi kar sakte, hum samajhte nahi hai." That's the excuse that people used to use. By the grace of Allah, you have, if it's English that you want, you have scholars that speak English. If it's Pakistani you want, you have scholars that speak Punjabi. If it's Gujarati, you have scholars that speak Gujarati. If it's Somali, you have scholars that speak Somali. If it's Hindi, you have scholars that speak Hindi. If it's Arabic, you have scholars that speak Arabic. So you have all the scholars. We have madaris in every city, every town. We have Islamic schools in more or less every city, every town. We have everything. We have all the resources. And you know the sad thing is, it's free. There's no charge. Yeah, top end your children when you send them to the masjid, what do they pay? 5 quid a week. What's 5 quid? Compare that with a maths or English lesson when you pay for tuition. Tuition, 20 quid an hour. 20 quid an hour, a kid comes to the masjid 10 hours a week, it's 5 quid. And even then you have a heart attack. Yeah, it's 50p an hour. 50p in comparison to dunya, you pay 20 pound for maths and English. So it's free. It's not, it's nothing. And you know, for elders, there's no charge. All this, it's free. All the resources are there. The meal's been cooked. All you've got to do is pick up that lukma and place it in your mouth, and you're not prepared to do that. The meal's been cooked. You don't have to travel all the way to Makkah and Medina on foot, like our forefathers did. You don't have to spend millions and millions of pounds like Yahya ibn Ma'in and other scholars. Like Shafi'i, couldn't afford to buy paper. The resources are there. Everything is there. The meal's been cooked. All you've got to do is pick up that morsel and place it in your mouth. And you're not prepared to do it. Where are we going wrong? How will you show your face on the day of judgment to Allah? What excuse? Do you think ignorance is an excuse? I didn't know. If ignorance is not an excuse in the dunya, do you think it'll be an excuse in the akhirah? Go through red lights and tell the policeman, I'm ignorant, I didn't know. And watch him give you a kiss on the forehead. Well done, next time, come to know. And you probably think, what planet are you on? And arrest you for insanity. Ignorance is not an excuse in the dunya. Do you think ignorance will be an excuse with regards to the basics of deen? Do you think ignorance with regards to fara'iz will be an excuse on the day of judgment? It's no excuse. Where are we going wrong? Let me just tell you where we're going wrong and let me conclude. Let me tell you where we're going wrong. We just can't see the benefits. Why should I waste my time learning the deen of Allah when there's no to gain? What can you gain from learning the Quran and Sunnah? What? Become an imam? And you know, a monkey is on more nuts than him. A monkey is on more nuts than an imam. This is the most oppressed occupation. So that's a no-go area. There's no benefit there. What, you're going to buy a house with it? Ilmedeen? It's not going to get you a house. A mobile phone? No. A holiday? No. Is it going to get you a wife? No way on God's earth. Put that on your, CV. She's interested. But everyone strives for the dunya because you see the benefits. Look, everyone dreams the dream. What's the Pakistani dream? Doctor, engineer. Everyone dreams of becoming a doctor, and engineer, and pharmacist, and dentist. Not that there's anything wrong with it, and you should. Because just as we need scholars and we need people that are educated in terms of the deen, we need people that are educated in terms of the dunya. But the point that I'm making here is, everyone dreams of becoming a doctor and an engineer. Why? Because you see the benefit. Doctor, automatically 100k. That's what flashes up in your mind. And automatically straight away, you can buy yourself that bungalow that you've been dreaming about. You can buy yourself that car that you've been dreaming about. You can have the latest iPhone. And you know what? Tell that to a woman, put that on your CV, and they'll be throwing themselves at you. And you'll be doing the tango in the Bahamas every year, in the Caribbean. So you see the benefit. But you can't see the benefit in terms of ilm deen, so why should you waste your time? Now I'm going to agree with you, okay, what you become a doctor and an engineer. There are these benefits. You'll get yourself a nice house, maybe a wife, maybe a holiday every year. Yeah? But how long will these benefits last? 50 years? 60 years? 70 years? For as long as you live, then what? What will happen after that? Will you take these benefits with you? Will you take your house? Give me an example of one guy from the time of Adam alayhi salam to this day. But give it to me right till the day of judgment. Yeah? One guy that's taken his house with him in his grave. Other than Qarun. Other than Qarun. That's taken his house with him in his grave. You know, your wife claims that she loves you more than anyone. Isn't that so? Your wife is the one that serves you, makes your khidmat, takes care of you, and she claims that she loves you more than anyone. Have you ever seen one go with her husband? Okay, I can't live without you. She says that in the dunya. You know, you go, let's say from here, you're going to go Bradford. Nahi, mera kya hoga? I can't live without you one day. You're going to leave me all alone. Go 6 foot under and say, come with me. You know, when you take the vows, what does she say? Till death do us part. Okay, you're all right till you're alive, till death do us part. You're on your way, mate. I ain't going with you. I'm moving on. That's the woman that claims that she loves you more than anyone. So you're not taking anything with you. Do you understand? And that's as far as it goes. The second thing is, yeah, you'll get these luxuries, but having luxuries and happiness is two different things. A good sofa brings about luxury, comfort. A good car brings about luxury, comfort. It's not necessary that it'll bring about happiness. Happiness is something completely different. You know, if it brought about happiness, then why is it that people possess more than you and I can even dream of? Millions in terms of dollars. But they die of depression. They commit suicide. If they're happy, why would you want to commit suicide? If you're happy, why would you be depressed? If you're happy, why would you want to resort to dope to take your mind off things, and alcohol and liquor and women just to take your mind off things? If you're happy and you want these millions of pounds. Happiness is one thing and comfort is another thing. These luxuries will bring about comfort, not bring about happiness. And why do you want these comforts? You want them for happiness, so that you can be happy, but it doesn't buy happiness. If you're chasing the dunya for happiness, my young friends, then surely you should be chasing the deen of Allah and ilm deen. Because if it's happiness that you're looking for, ilm deen will give you happiness like no ilm dunya can. Allah says in the Quran, "Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innal qulub." Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innal qulub. You need to possess knowledge to act upon it. The more knowledge that you act upon, the more your heart will be at ease, peace, content, satisfied, and happy. The more, and I swear by Allah, you don't have to believe me, act upon what I'm saying. If you don't find it to be so, then you know what? I'm that comfortable in what I'm saying that you can hold my neck on the day of judgment before Allah and say he lied in the masjid. You can hold my neck. Possess the knowledge and act upon that knowledge. The more you act upon that knowledge, the more your heart will be at ease and happy and content. And it'll get to a stage where you actually begin to taste the sweetness of Iman. Sweetness of Iman. And when you start tasting the sweetness of Iman, then you know what? Whatever Allah throws at your way, whatever difficulty Allah throws at your way, He takes away all your children in one hadithah, one event. He takes your wife, He takes your mother and father. You know what? In spite of what Allah throws at your way, you'll still have a smile on your face because inside your heart will be happy and content. Just as when He showers you with blessings, you'll be happy and content because it's come from Allah. And the day He puts you through difficulties, you'll still be happy because you know this has also come from your Allah. This is the level of Iman that you'll get to. You know, I began with the story of Bilal and I'll end with this story. Why is it that Bilal Habshi was persecuted by day and by night? Why wouldn't he renounce the kalima? Why wouldn't he say, why wouldn't he utter kalima kufr? They would persecute him by day and by night. Was he not a human being? If I were to, let's say, give you an example. I were to get, let's say I take a stick and started beating my friend here. How long before he started dancing and started, to the tune that I'm singing? How long before? 1 or 2? Good ones? And he'll drop his pants, never mind anything else. And whatever I ask him, he will do, because he'll feel the pain, and naturally so would I. But why is it Bilal, they would persecute him by day and by night and tell him kufr, kufr, kufr. But Bilal would say, no, ahad, ahad, and he becomes stronger, ahad, ahad. Day in, day out, night in, night out. This is how they would persecute, and he would say, ahad, ahad, you do what you want, ahad, ahad. Why would he do that? Let me tell you, my young friends, because when they were persecuting Bilal, he could taste the sweetness of Iman. And that sweetness would make him forget the bitterment of the punishment. Give you an example, and this time I'm really going to conclude. You're just too kind. You've got a good restaurant here. Is it the Kashmir? You've got a Kashmir restaurant here. A guy from Sweden's walked in. He likes the vindaloo there. So he's come all the way from Sweden, white guy, orders himself a vindaloo, and he sits down and he starts eating this vindaloo, chicken vindaloo. And obviously vindaloo's hot. So he takes out his handkerchief and he's sweating. He's got smoke coming out of his ears, and he's got water coming out of his eyes and nose, and he's eating this vindaloo. And every time he's eating, he's wiping away this water coming out of his nose and his eyes and his thing. And you've walked into the Kashmir restaurant and you've seen this guy on a table on his own, bichara, sitting down eating, and he's crying. You're thinking, yeah, what's bichara? He's eating this vindaloo and he's got smoke coming out of his ears, and what you can see zahiran, outwardly, is that this guy is suffering. That's what you can see. But is that guy really suffering? Try taking his vindaloo from him. Do you think he'll give you his vindaloo? Though you can see him suffer, my young friends, that suffering from the outside means nothing to him. He can take that 1,000,000 times, but he is not prepared to give that vindaloo. For that vindaloo, he can tolerate that 1,000,000 times over. So my young friends, Bilal Habshi, from outwardly you saw the suffer, you saw the pain, and there was pain there. But from inside, he was so happy and so content that what he was feeling, that buzz at that time inside his heart, what they were doing to him then, they could do that 1,000,000 times over. He was not prepared to leave what Allah was giving him in place of this torture and kufr, sweetness of Iman. This is when, my young friends, even when you don't possess a penny in your pocket, you're sleeping rough on the streets of India, where the Mother Earth is your bed, the heaven is your blanket, and a stone, a brick, is your pillow. You're lying there, content, happy, a billionaire, with a smile in your face. Yeah? More happier than the sheikhs in Dubai and the kings in their palaces. And if this is what Allah gives you in the dunya, that without a penny in your pocket, you feel like a king every morning, every evening throughout your life. And it's all about happiness. You're working day and night for what? Happiness. You want to buy stuff that make you happy. And if Allah gives you this in terms of your dunya, then what do you think Allah will give you in terms of your akhirah, in terms of happiness? Because the things that we're chasing are not going to go with you in terms of your akhirah. In terms of your akhirah, you will receive a thing called paradise. Money can't buy paradise. And what will you receive in paradise? And on this note I conclude, مَا لَا عَيْنٌ رَأَتْ وَلَا أُذْنٌ سَمِيَتْ وَلَا خَطَرْ عَلَى قَلْبِ بَشَرٍ. What no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, the thought which has not even crossed the human mind. If you're chasing the dunyavi sciences, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. What I'm saying is, if you can see the benefits there, then why can't you see the benefits here, when the benefits here are 1,000,000 times far greater than the benefits here? The benefits here top end are the dunya, and even then it doesn't bring happiness. The benefits here, you live like a king in the dunya, and you will live like a king in the akhirah. The benefits are far greater. And I'm not asking you to become scholars. All I'm saying is learn the deen of Allah. Come give 1 hour a week and learn it from the right people. The right people, not internet scholars. You don't know who they are, what they've actually studied. As a result of which many of our youth have been misguided and led astray. Do it like the Prophet ﷺ did with Jibreel and the Sahaba did with Rasulullah ﷺ, heart to heart, one to one. From people that are practicing their deen. May Allah give me the tawfiq, Allah give you the tawfiq. Wa akhiru da'wana.